Boom, boom.
Boom,
Well,
boom.
welcome, everybody. Greg Peterson coming to you from our almost named farm in Asheville, North Carolina. We've been batting around some names after having spent a year here. And I'm with Janice. Hello, Janice.
Hello, Greg. I'm Janice. I'm coming from my little piece of heaven called Two Peace in a Pod. I'm in North Peoria, Arizona.
And y'all are going to get to see her do a presentation in our upcoming water harvesting summit next month. That's just 30 days out. You realize that, right, Janice?
Yeah, we haven't opened up the registrations yet, so you all are getting the early notice.
Next week we'll be opening up registrations.
Mhm.
Each summer we do a water harvesting summit. We get some really cool people to come on and talk about water harvesting and that kind of stuff. And then
And a topic that is becoming more and more urgent every time we open the news.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's coming up in just 30 days.
Yes,
All right.
but tonight it is Tree Chat. Oh, by the way, Greg is in North Carolina and I'm in North Peoria, but together we're the Urban Farm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So tonight we're talking about apples. This is the June Tree Care Chat with Farmer Greg Peterson and Janice Norton. And we're going to be talking about apples. Now, our tree care chat has grown out of a desire to connect with those who have been purchasing trees in our local fruit tree program and to share information. And it's been something that people have kind of not wanted us to quit. And there's just been too many people saying, don't stop, we still want this. So Greg and I are still going to do it as long as there's a need. This year we've just
Plus we love teaching it. So sharing, I'll say sharing.
Yeah, we really do. But this year we kind of wanted to have a new theme. I do that. I come up with themes. And I said I wanted to focus on a new tree a month. And Greg's like, all right, let's do it. This month we are talking about apples, which is kind of fun because wasn't that one of your first trees that you started planting at the Urban Farm? Or was it citrus? Yeah, it was apples.
No, citrus came along actually 15 years after I moved into the Urban Farm. So
I did get that right. Apples. Well, I'm harvesting apples right now. So this is a yummy, yummy, yummy topic.
Nice.
So as our want in creating this community, this is an open community chat. We have different levels of communication in our webinars, and this one is designed around trying to keep a conversation going and sharing this as community. So we're just going to ask to go ahead and join us, tell your friends about us, let everybody come in and be a part. If you can support us with urbanfarm.org/support us, every little bit helps. But we appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Questions go in the Q&A. We will address those as much as we can throughout and picking up at the end where we just open up to focusing on the questions. And if you have questions that we aren't answering, you can send us to an emails. So we're going to chat today. Our topics are, of course, fertilizing. When, what, where in June, what the important things for June. And then we're going to do.
And given that trees and plants need to eat every day, if you're just fertilizing your plants once a year or twice a year, it's not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough. So this fertilizing schedule is good for anybody pretty much anywhere.
And that's a good point, because when we talk about fertilizing, plants eat the nutrients in the soil. And some people think that plants are going to be fine in the soil with whatever's there, but they can deplete the soil of the nutrients and then they don't have anything. And if we rely on what comes in the bag of planting mix and don't do anything else, our plants are going to run out of food. So how to fertilize in June. So do you do granular fertilizing? No. especially in the low desert, the way our schedule is, you should have already given the fertilizer at the end of May, the granular fertilizer at the end of May. So they don't need any of the slow release fertilizer again in June. It's just not necessary.
One of the
However,
things, so Tom Spellman is the representative from the place where we buy a bulk of our trees from, and he says trees should be fertilized 4 times a season.
4 times a year.
4 times a year. That's for me. A fruit tree season is a year, but 4 times a year. And in Arizona, we do it in Valentine's Day, Tax
Tax
Day,
day.
Memorial Day, and Labor Day. If you're in a really cold climate like Minnesota, you might want to push that out and add another one in the summer.
See, what we're doing now here in the low desert is we're giving that dose of fertilizer at a point right before it starts to get really hot to give it the food that it's going to need to survive this summer. You don't want to feed during this summer. You just want to feed right before this summer, not granular. The slow release that you give it in May will get a tree through the summer in the low desert. Now, drench feeding, now that is when you're giving it kind of like a big water bath of nutrients. And what we recommend is Heart, which is a humic acid, a nice heavy humic acid. And if you want to throw in some essence, you can, but you definitely want to do some humic acid to feed the soil. Drenching feeds the microbes and all of the life in the soil. So what we're doing is we're giving a nice big 5-gallon bucket with some humic acid. Our favorite is Heart. Pour that around the basin, around, not next to the trunk, but in the basin itself. And then you're going to deep water that. So right before you're watering, you go ahead and pour this on there. Foliar feeding is when you're taking care of giving the nutrients in through the leaves. And this is the fastest, quickest way for a tree to uptake nutrients. Several people asked me lately, is it too hot for foliar feeding? No, here in the low desert, we are still at a good time for doing some foliar feeding because what your optimal temperatures are is between 65 and 80 degrees when you're doing the feeding. So we are reaching those temperatures in the mornings. We are still in those temperatures in the mornings. If you go out and you spray before the sun comes up or right as the sun is starting to come up and you've got that light, you're still in a great temperature zone to go ahead and foliar feed. So every couple of weeks, go ahead and foliar feed and you spray the leaves, top and bottom, you spray the branches, you spray the trunks, and you are going to be able to give that quick, immediate gratification kind of thing, but you only want to do this with organic formulas. If you do this with an inorganic formula, you're getting your trees hooked on something that's not natural. You want to do this with an organic formula. So that's why we recommend Essence and Soul.
I just really quickly want to, foliar feeding is spraying on the leaves and trunks and bark of the tree. Drench, and that's it's usually a fish or humic acid or kelp fertilizer.
It's usually a kelp and another humic acid, which is the Soul.
Perfect. And then drench is essentially doing the same thing. We're mixing those fertilizers with water real lightly and just dumping it on the roots, so it's taking it up through the roots. And we have those available. We can ship them to you. I'm putting in the chat right now the link to our shopping
For those
cart.
of you who are watching this later and not the live, our link is store.urbanfarm.org, and you go into the general store and you can find our fertilizing our options there.
Perfect. Thank you.
And on this chart here, it shows you what the morning temperatures are and the evening temperatures. For those of you who are not in the low desert and you do have evening temperatures that are still between the 65 to 80 degrees, that is a great time to foliar feed. You would still do the biweekly feeding in that temperature range in the early morning or in the evenings in that range. doesn't matter where you are. That is a good time to have your trees soak it up. So you either feed the tree through the leaves or you feed the soil through drenching. All right, I do this every month because I'm really passionate about it. And there's always questions because sometimes it takes more than once of doing this before it starts to sink in. All right, if you have any questions about that, we have laminated copies on the store, or you can go to urbanfarm.org/nutrition. There's a lot of information on that page, so I tried to make it in a page that you can open and collapse the different sections to get what you need. So the fruit of the month is apples. Yay, apples.
Isn't that a fun font?
It
I was
is.
right 15, 20 minutes ago, Janice and I were chatting and I just called out this font. I said, use that font. I didn't know
Use
what it
that
was.
font.
And it turned out so cool.
I love this picture that you found because it has so many different sizes. And, we know that, probably this section right here in the middle is the apples that we're finding at the stores or we're
Mhm.
growing on our trees. And look at these tiny apples. They're amazing.
When we're going to talk about that in a little while.
I know.
It's amazing.
So the quote of the month is, even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. What a great quote from Martin Luther.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, there it is.
This is yours, Greg.
Yeah. So I actually read about Johnny Appleseed a couple of decades ago. He was a real person. And what he used to do is in the late 1700s and early 1800s, I think he was born in 1775 or something like that. He would go to the cider mills and collect seeds, and then he would go in advance of the population moving west, and he would plant out orchards and make them available for the settlers coming in. His goal, I read this today, his goal was to make sure that everybody had food, that there was enough food for everybody. And what he was doing, unbeknownst to him at the time, I'm sure, was he was getting this genetic diversity of seeds. Because when apple tree A crosses with apple tree B, it makes a hybrid that's a mix of the mom and the dad tree. And so he was spreading all of these incredible seeds. And I haven't been to Geneva, New York. One of these years I'll get there. They have a plant genetic resource unit. I've read about it in the past. This is where this picture's from. And they have 6,079 different kinds of apples.
Mind blown. I should have done that as a poll.
Right? And it's because of the work that Johnny Appleseed and other people did in the late 1700s and 1800s. They were just taking those seeds and getting them planted. And one of my friends that lives on the street over, she took a bunch of apple seeds and did that exact same thing. She's got an apple orchard that she started from seed. So it'll be interesting over the course of the next decade to see what happens with that.
Well, I'm going to launch a quick poll before we go too far here. I'd like to know how many apple trees you have. So if you wouldn't mind, just quickly tell us, how many do you have? We're getting our answers already.
For people in Phoenix, it's like 1 to 3.
1 to 3, probably, yeah.
Or 1 to 2. You should have put 1 to 2 and then 3 to 6, because I'm very excited about what I'm going to announce here in about 3 slides.
I know.
All
All right. So we're going to share the results here really quick. Looks like 73% of you have 1 to 3, probably 2. Greg, I should have done that the other way. A couple of you have 4 to 6, and some of you have none. Maybe you'll change after this, but that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the different apples that are really good for the valley and why we think these are the best. Greg?
The low desert, let's say,
For
not
the
the valley,
low
the
desert.
low desert. And actually, go ahead, go to the apples, like 4 slides ahead.
You're going to jump to that one already?
All right. Well, it's easier for me. I'm going to talk about it anyway. So
You'll get there.
there's 2 reasons, really 3 reasons, but 2 main reasons that apples do well in the city, in the low desert, and that is chill hours and ripening time. And if you're picking trees that are outside of those 2 parameters, they're not likely going to do very well. And I am always one to experiment. I'm doing all kinds of experimenting here in North Carolina. But what I have found with growing apple trees for over 40 years in Phoenix, that the Anna apple and the Dorset golden apple are the 2 apples that one should plant, and I would skip all the rest. I'll get to why we'd skip all the rest of them here in a little while. The Anna is an amazing tree. It makes a red blushed apple. The apples from both the Anna and the Dorset golden make great apple sauce, apple cider, apple chips, apple pies. They're great to eat. They're both ultra low chill. I think the Anna is at 200 hours. Anna's at 200 hours. The Dorset golden is at 100 hours. And they are highly productive. Both of them are self-fertile. What self-fertile means is that
They have a perfect flower.
Okay, that I didn't remember, but they have a perfect flower. Go ahead.
Well, what happens is in self-fertile versus needing something else to fertile is whether or not their own flowers can fertilize themselves. And when they can fertilize themselves, when the pollinator or the bee or whatever comes in and brushes through, it will go through the pollen and hit the part of the flower that needs to be fertilized in the same batch. So it doesn't need pollen from another tree to finish that process.
Nice. And I am told by our friends that we get the trees from that if you have 2 apples, they do some cross-pollinating and you'll get more apples. So the Anna and the Dorset golden apples are the go-to apples for the low desert. And when I say low desert, I'm talking about Palm Springs to the low desert of Southern California to everything basically from Carefree and Cave Creek south in Arizona, like that.
Now, one of the things that I would recommend if you have apples is to look for your particular apple and look for flowers that are going to be blooming just a little bit before that time. So right at the end of February, early March, if you have flowers that are blooming around that time and stay blooming. I personally had desert bluebells in my yard, and the bees love them, but they came because they saw the desert bluebells and then they hit everything else in my yard. So that was I actually love the color of the desert bluebells. They don't, when they start to die out, they're I have to clean them up a little bit, but they did their work beautifully because I had a gorgeous harvest in my yard this time. Just beautiful.
Awesome.
So now you've got the new thing to share.
Drum roll, please.
I do not do a drum roll well. My son would laugh at me hilariously.
There you go.
There we go.
I've been watching for the past couple of years a new apple for the low desert.
Nice. Well, we've been doing that for whatever we can find.
Exactly. And I saw this came on my radar maybe a year and a half ago. Somebody out in the West Valley was growing and harvesting a ghost apple. And so I got on with our supplier recently, and we've got 50 of these coming in. They are a little higher chill, but 300 to 400 hours is well within what we can, what we get. Usually we get about 350 in the Valley.
In some years we get a little more, in some years we might get a little bit on the low side. This year we're a little bit on the high side. So not by much, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's been good.
And this is huge news because for decades, and on the next slide, you're going to see uh,
Let's
why,
talk
but
about this. It does well in hot climates. It's got a white skin with a sweet subacidic flavor. I am really excited about that. I like the sweet apples.
right.
All right.
It'll be fun to get these. So I did order some, and for decades I've been, recommending only 2 apples.
Can you explain what Zyger is for those that don't know?
Ah, yes, yes, yes. So there is Lloyd Zager.
Zager.
Lloyd Zager is no longer with us, but he created a lot of hybrids. Hybrids aren't bad. They're basically taking a plum and a cherry and making pluaries. And
He just
it's,
played with the plants to see how he could plant to plant.
yeah, exactly. So this is one of his products, a ghost apple. So I'm really excited. I did see in my reading about this today that it is also
Oops, sorry.
that's okay. It's also good in chillier climates. So I may actually bring back one with me to North Carolina this next year.
Yay. It'll be fun to try.
No, Deb, Zyger did it by cross
Pollinating.
pollinating. Yeah. She said he did it through grafting. No,
Now, can we explain what that is? Shall I take a
grafting
stab at it?
Go.
Okay, so grafting is when you take one variety and you connect it with a cut and you attach them open wound, not open wood to wood, and you allow the trees to grow together. That's a very important thing because all of our trees that we bring in the fruit tree program, all of our apple trees are grafted because the variety that's on the top is the one that's producing the fruit. The variety that's on the bottom is the one that's best suited to grow in our soil. So grafting is an important term, but it does not affect the fruit. So when you have we have different peaches on the same type of rootstock, we have different apples on that rootstock. Grafting will not affect the fruit. It'll just affect the life of the tree. The pollination is when you try the different flowers and they are going to fruit, and then you take the seed of this pollinating, because you take one variety flower and one variety flower and you pollinate it. The fruit that's now connected has messaging in its seeds to create a new variety. So then he'll take the seeds of this new variety and create a tree. That tree may or may not be grafted onto a different rootstock so that it'll survive, but that tree has now produced a new variety. And when you want to have, like what we have a whole bunch of Annas and Dorset Goldens. All of those are branches off of a healthy tree that are grafted onto a different rootstock. How'd I do, Greg?
Yeah, you
Awesome.
did great. And Deb says, okay, but no labs involved or genetics. That's correct. The same thing happens in nature when, one squash pollinates another squash, or in the case of the apple picture that we talked about with the 6,079 different varieties of apples, they're just cross-pollinating. And I get this question a lot. People ask me, can I plant the seed from the orange? You can absolutely plant the seed from the orange or the apricot or the plum, or you can plant them. It's kind of, it's kind of a
Fun.
it is fun, but it's a wild card for whether you're going to actually get fruit.
Now, one of the concerns that is brought up in a lot of conversations when we're talking about mixing is genetically modified. And genetically modified doesn't have to be bad unless you're talking about, and this is where we're issuing like, wait a minute, what are you thinking? Is when you are putting plant and animal together. That's not really what nature's doing. Nature will do plant to plant and come up with some beautiful varieties.
I'm going to stop you there. Genetic engineering is where they take one gene from one species and put it in another. And I have yet to find a reason to be doing that. So
And
that's
that's where they're
genetic.
they're doing the genetics, the gene intervention as opposed to the pollen intervention.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. All right.
All right.
Okay, so why do we only recommend these? Well, now 3, although the ghost apple is for the next 3 or 4 years is going to be somewhat experimental. But from what I've been hearing is that they're getting nice amounts of apples off of them. There are 2 things that you need to know about growing apples in the desert. And chill hours is one of them. We get about 350 hours of chill in the low desert. So you need a low or ultra low chill apple in order for them to set fruit. That's number one.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
6,000 varieties and we've only got 3 right now that really work. So yeah, it's an important concept.
Right. And then the other thing is ripening times. It gets so hot. For those of you in Phoenix, you don't know this, or the low desert, you don't know this, but it gets ultra hot. I mean,
What do you mean? Those of us in the low desert don't know this.
No, those of you that aren't in the low desert,
Okay.
you don't know this. There you go. Thank you. It can easily be over 110 degrees for what, 45, 50 days throughout the summer.
Mhm.
And what I found, and I discovered this over the course of the last 40 years of growing fruit trees in the desert, is that soft flesh fruited trees, peaches, plums, apricots, apples, grapes, berries, if they're ripening after about July 1st, the fruit cooks on the tree. And I tried and tried. I planted dozens of fruit trees that ripened in the late summer and fall. And I took every single one of them out just because it was too dang hot. The fruit
Yeah.
cooks on the tree. And, people say, well, the Fuji apple and the Pink Lady and all these apples, they're low chilled. Why can't I grow them? Well, you can. And if you're happy getting 5 or 10 or 15 pieces of fruit, knock
Before you
yourself
lose them.
out.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out. It's an experiment. Go for it.
Yeah.
But when we plant the Anna and the Dorset golden apple, literally we get hundreds and hundreds of pieces of fruit off of a single tree. It's, it's just amazing. So
It is.
that's it. Chill hours and ripening times for the low desert. So that's the only reason we bring in just the 2 varieties, now 3 varieties of trees.
Let's go back a bit and we're going to talk about the size of these trees because Donald wanted to know what the size of these trees are when they're mature.
Mhm.
So you've
Well,
got experience with them.
It depends.
I love that answer.
How tall are you going to let them get?
So let's say if you are in a small yard,
Mhm.
then you can keep them very easily to be 8 to 10 feet tall and be quite happy for as long as you live in the house.
Yep.
But if you've got space and you let them grow, Greg, how tall could they get?
Well, so there's different varieties of rootstock, and the
Mhm.
rootstocks designate how big the tree will get. And generally, we bring in M111 rootstock. It's a rootstock that does really well for apples, that does really well in the desert. And I had an Anna apple in my backyard. It's still there at the urban farm in Phoenix. And it was probably 24 feet tall. And I specifically let it get tall. We normally bring in and trees and keep them at 8 to 10 feet on purpose. That one was in a particular place in my backyard that it shaded the back patio in the late afternoon in the summer. That was one of my reasons. A second reason is that I wanted an apple tree to climb, and I used to climb that apple tree. And the third reason is, when you keep a tree at 6 to 9, 10 feet tall, you're going to get a certain amount of fruit, which will be a nice amount of fruit. but the 22, 24-foot tall apple tree in the backyard at the urban farm, yeah, we used to get hundreds of pounds of, I think one year, like 3 years ago, I sold 180 pounds off of that one tree. And I had a lot left over. So,
I love this question because somebody's thinking forward, and the answer can be, it depends. Because when they're mature, they have the capability of matching whatever their rootstock will allow them to become and the space.
mhm,
So if you wanted something big, yes, you could allow it to be big. But then you're needing to be ready for the onslaught of produce that you're getting. But if you want them, if you're worried about them getting too big, it's really not that much work to keep them something at a size you can manage.
right. When I'm doing my elderberries are going in, I'm putting 100 of them. They're going to go in 3 feet apart. So
You're
I'm
going thick.
growing a high density hedge,
Mhm.
and I will keep them. And I was just talking to a person today about it. I'll go in twice a month,
Cindy.
just walk down the hedgerow, and I'll keep them, 3 feet, 3.5 feet tall or wide, and about 8 feet tall. And anything outside of that's going to get pruned.
Yep.
So,
All right. So there we've talked about the 3 trees that we have in the Urban Farm Fruit Tree Program. The ghost apple will be added to our cart later this month. The apple trees that we have are already open on our cart. If you wanted to reserve them, and I would say if you are thinking about it, do it soon, because we had a price raise, and that is going to be affecting some of the trees on our cart within the next couple of weeks.
I do want to say, for people that don't know how our program works, we do education all year round. We
Mhm.
open our cart now for pre-orders. The deciduous trees, that includes apples, you can pre-order now, but you don't pick them up until January. And we do not ship. You have to come to our lot in Phoenix and pick them up.
Yep. All right.
I love this. Cindy says, when I pick my apples, I always sing, "Don't
I
sit under
know.
the apple tree."
I've got it in my head now. I got a little room with anybody else but me. Okay, so while doing the research for this month, I found this cute article that was describing probably like 40 different benefits of green apples. And so I picked out a few of them that I thought might be something that might resonate. This is about green apples, and red apples absolutely have some of these benefits as well. So if any of these resonate with you, then yay. Of course, we're going to say apples are good for you.
My favorite thing to do with apples is dehydrate them.
Dehydrate them.
And I just got a new dehydrator. It arrived the other day.
I've got mine ready to come down just because my apples are I just pulled off a bunch yesterday off the tree.
Perfect. You know what?
What?
So I bought a box of assorted apples at the farmer's market in the fall
Mm-hmm.
here in Asheville, and they were seconds. So, in fixing them up, I had to, excuse me, sorry about that. In fixing them up, I had to, take some bruises off and that kind of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I prepped them, and there were 6 or 8 or 10 different kinds of apples. And it's amazing to me the different flavors that they are when
Yeah.
they're dehydrated. I hadn't a clue, because I've only ever grown Anna and Dorset golden apples, but there were floral smelling, tasting ones. And it's
Mm.
amazing.
Well, we've got Kristen here in the Valley that has been on our program a few times.
Hmm.
She is expanding into a business that is going to offer freeze drying. So you
Hmm.
can harvest your crop and then schedule with her and then bring them in to get freeze dried. So that's yummy.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking about buying a freeze dryer.
Yeah. So one of the things that happens this week with the fruit tree program and with basically Greg and the urban farm is offering some insight. I got an email just this morning about some yellowing of leaves. And I wanted to bring this up, and I hope I'm not going to say a name so that nobody knows this person is, because they didn't get his permission to basically use his name. But these pictures here show chlorosis. And that's when the nutrients are not getting into the leaves. Now, this is his grapevine, and a few of the leaves are starting to do this just recently and within the last couple of weeks, and he's losing them. Now, I believe this to be that there are some new plants coming up, and the iron or manganese is not being taken in by the older leaves. This is chlorosis. Iron and manganese are usually the two elements that are being shown with that. So what's probably happening is that we've got a new influx of water or nutrients, and the tree has, or the plant is not able to process the iron, most likely. But the new leaves that are popping up on the vine there are showing good life, and they're showing good health. So what is going to happen is the tree is going to move its energy into the new leaves and let go of the older leaves, because the older leaves aren't processing it.
And I'm sure foliar feeding will help with this.
I was just going to say, if we did some foliar feeding on this and watch the watering, when you have a tree that's struggling, you don't want to overwater, and you also don't want to underwater, but to allow the watering to be something that's going to wash the salts through, because I don't see any brown on the edge of these, so I don't see salt burn. But it is possible that maybe the watering didn't, that washed off the nutrients. Maybe the watering was focused in one area. Just keep an eye out. And I have a bunch of questions that I'm asking him about what was the watering cycle? How deep are you watering? Have you done any foliar feeding? Even going to double check the pH level of the soil maybe might be necessary, but it's never a simple, well, this is your answer. It's let's talk about everything that's happening with your plant, so we make sure that we are addressing the whole issue, not something that you see at just one spot thing. Because again, if this is just in a couple of leaves in just one area, or maybe one branch got damaged, and we can go see if that particular branch has a problem that's developed. Maybe there's a bird has scratched or broken the branch, or maybe there's a borer in the branch, and you can trace it back instead of the whole plant. So we're going to talk more about that.
However, I was going to say the next slide is an absolute. And I had,
however, go ahead.
it's not, this is not an it depends.
No.
This is an absolute. I was chatting with a young lady last month, and about, this is root stock. This is the root stock coming out, and you want to.
Here is the graph point, because you can see the change in the trunk there. Sometimes it's not, you kind of have to look for it, and it's right here. There's a graph point. It disappears over time.
Yep. So I instructed her to those had to all be removed, otherwise they will take over the tree. The other thing is, you don't ever want to cut them off. If you
just end up creating more.
Exactly. It's so interesting. If you cut one of those off, it branches off and gives you 2. And if you cut that off, it'll branch off and give you 4, and then 8, and then 16, and before long you're done. So you actually trace them back to the tree trunk and snap them off at the tree trunk.
It actually is a weak spot right there.
Yep.
Where you can snap it, so that what you're doing is you're stopping the growth point on that rootstock sucker.
Yeah. So I talked to her last month, and it's like, please send me those pictures, because this is really poignant. I've had multiple people over the years say, I planted a navel orange tree in my yard, and I'm getting these yucky little things that are inedible. And when we trace it back, this is what happens. It's the rootstock that comes out.
Yeah, and rootstocks can start here by the trunk right there. In my yard, I've had them pop up with the roots, foot and a half, 2 feet away from the tree. I'm like, where did this plum come from? And I thought maybe I had a plum that had fallen and, a seed had taken up. Nope. When I traced it back, it was rootstock from the main tree. So you can you can be surprised that way. But what I needed to do was, because it was from the rootstock and I knew that this was not going to be the plant that I wanted, I needed to go down far enough into the soil to get to that point where I could break it off.
Yeah.
And the sooner you do it, the easier, because when they're nice and young like this, they'll snap off easy.
Yep.
When if they've actually taken to the point where they start to turn color, they're going to be really harder to break that growth point.
Yeah.
So our questions are open. We've got a few questions in there. While those are opening up, we can go there. I wanted to tell y'all that we have been offering consults. Greg's been offering 45-minute to an hour consults online for years now. And we've had people showing up at the Fruit Tree program, and Greg's been encouraging me to do this. So we've started offering them with myself and Ray. We each have 1 day a week that we are available. So now there's more opportunity to get help, that you can either get Greg or you can schedule with myself or Ray. If you go to theurbanfarm.as.me, one-stop shopping, you go ahead and schedule your appointment and pay for it right there. It's easier than trying to go through our shopping cart.
Let me tell you something about this too. About 6-7 years ago. So I've been doing consults like this for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always offered a money back guarantee. If you're not 100% happy, I'll give you your money back. I've never given anybody his money back because they get so much information. But about 6-7 years ago, and I remember who this is, I had somebody come to me and we did a garden consult because their trees were dying and so on and so on. And the garden consult was probably $95. I think it's $120 now. And when we got done, she said, "Oh my gosh, Greg, if I would have paid you for the garden consult ahead of time, I would have saved myself over $1,000 in dead trees."
Mm-hmm.
And, mistakes. So what we've done is we've put together a team, the three of us, we've been doing this a long time. And the way that it works is you send us pictures of your space, your address, and we can walk you through what's going on in your space and answer your questions and help you make the right decisions about where to put things and how to plant them and like that. And
Yeah.
I know for Janice and Raymond, it's probably local to Phoenix. I do them nationally. And I've done them in Texas and Nevada and California, so I can do them elsewhere as well. And
Yeah.
they're permaculture based, and
All
like
three of
that,
us are
so.
permaculture based, and
Yep.
Ray and I are master gardeners. Ray is much more experienced doing the gardening. He likes that because he's got time. I love trees and soil, but we're here for you.
There you go. All right, let's get to the questions.
Questions. Mark says he planted an Anna and a Dorset about 15 to 20 years ago, and now borers have devastated them. How does one care and protect this investment from borer infestation?
So, first of all, Mark, and answer this in the chat, where are you located? Are you in the low desert, or are you, I'm assuming by the
Mark's in
varieties,
Chandler.
Chandler. Okay, good. If you get 20 years out of an apple tree, you're doing really good. That being said, if you are foliar feeding and drench feeding and really keeping the health of the tree up, you might get 25 years out of them. What I found, and I grew fruit trees starting in 1974 in Phoenix, the Valley, right in the middle of Phoenix. What I found with stone fruit, so that's anything with a pit in the middle of it, and apples, if you get 20 years out of them, you're doing really, really good. I lived at the urban farm for 32 years. And so I processed through that and saw that, there's a timeline for them. Citrus, on the other hand, I had 2 citrus trees in the backyard that were planted in the 1920s. They're still thriving. Last I was at the urban farm in September of last year, they're still thriving back there and making fruit.
They can go for decades.
Well,
Yeah.
this is 100 years, and that there's a reported
Decades and decades and decades.
479 years was the oldest citrus tree that they found.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mark, if you did say in your comment that the borers have devastated them, that is a situation where you're probably going to want to get a specialist in to look and see what is going to be doing that. We do have somebody that we can tell you. He doesn't live too far away from Chandler, so send me an email, Janice@Urban Farm, and I will. I'll send you. I'll get you in contact with him. So,
However, I'm going to actually sidestep you on that one, and say, send me pictures, and I suspect they're at the end of their life, and what I would do is plant new ones.
there you go. Okay, we want to help you. We're not going to say just foliar feeding alone. There's going to be more to it, especially if you're explaining the way they are.
Yeah.
All right. Ahmed says, I get lots of dots on the grape leaves, not yellowing. Do you know what this is?
Need a picture.
Yeah, we need a picture. It could be, white flies. It could be other infestation. Foliar feeding will definitely help, but send us a picture and we'll be able to see what this is, because the size of the dots, the color of the dots, the location of the dots, the spreading of the dots, there's so many depends on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Sue says, if you let a tree grow tall, say a mulberry, when you do a foliar feed, do you spray the entire tree or just lower parts of the tree? Yes.
Yes. Now, one of the things that we brought in on the recommendation of one of our tree crew was the foliar, the mod kit. When you use something like this, your reach of your foliar spray is expanded. Now, my mulberry tree is so gorgeous and so big that when I'm foliar feeding, I cannot reach the tops no matter what I do unless I stand on a tree. So I focus on getting the inner branches and the leaves as much as possible. And by getting the wand in to go into on the underside, that helps us a lot. But you don't need to do that when you already have the fruits coming out. So you're spraying before the fruit come out,
Yep.
and then at the end of the summer to help it go through the winter.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Audrey says, can you snap the rootstock off any time of year? Yes. The
You see it,
moment
you snap it.
Yep. You see it, you snap it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sue says, when will the store be open for the ghost apples? I don't see them right now, but maybe I'm not looking in the right spot. Well, Sue, Greg only secured them as an option earlier today. So I don't even have the details or the phone or the pictures or anything to put up on the website. So I would say probably next week or maybe the week after I should have that. I'm usually pretty quick when I get it, but I've got to put a couple of the things on my table that I need to finish first. So it won't be long though. I'm very motivated to get these details into the cart.
Oh yeah, she is. Will you ever
I've already got other new stuff in there. We're getting new blueberries. I talked to Greg into letting us try some new blueberries. So we're getting a few new blueberries. We've got the new apples. We've got the new mulberry, the Illinois mulberry. We've got mesquite. The mesquite will be coming in. You pre-order now, and those will be available in the September pickup. So,
and in January, we're going to have some Mexican elderberry.
Oh, I know. I love this. We are expanding. Greg, we're going to have to make a bigger lot. Bigger lot.
There you go.
Bigger lot. We're going to have to move that. All right.
Boysenberries. Good question. Do we have any boysenberries?
Yeah. We have boysenberries.
So
do we talk about them? We haven't put them on the thing.
We need an expert on desert
berries.
Desert.
I know exactly who I want to talk to. Well, not desert. I need to find somebody desert. Yeah. But boysenberries. We do have boysenberries on there. Thought we did.
And Prime Arc blackberries. I'll have to check that.
We used to have Prime Arc. We haven't brought them back in a little bit. I think there was a chill hour issue with them, but we will
Yeah.
double check.
And Deb says cherries in the low desert are no-goes.
Yeah.
Every
Oh.
single one I've ever seen has died. It's a rootstock issue. And when I talk, because it gets so hot in the low desert, when I talked to Tom Spellman, he's our rep at the company that grows them, he said it'll be a good 10 years before they have a rootstock that'll survive the summer heat.
Yeah. Yeah. We
And
do
Elise,
have
go ahead.
Fluaries, which is a plum cherry hybrid.
That does really well. That's a Zager Genetics.
Yeah. There are other ones that are kind of close, but we just, at this point, the typical cherry that you're looking for is not something that's going to grow well in the low desert here.
Yeah. And Alicia, I don't know of anybody that would be interested in your collection of apple seeds. I would just plant them.
I would say, Alicia, there might be somebody up in the northern part of Arizona that might be interested. But you're not in Arizona, you're in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
So maybe reach out to your local Master Gardeners, and maybe somebody in the Master Gardener program might like to have them. They are sometimes people that are doing some experiments with them. So.
All right.
That's good timing. We did this. All right. So again, the consults later this month, we've got another introduction to drip tape. We created a deluxe drip tape starter kit. So we'll talk about that during the class. And I am, fingers crossed, I've got somebody that I'm hoping will come in and help talk about figs in July. So that'll be our next big topic, is figs. You can find our events at urbanfarm.org, or excuse me, urbanfarmevents.com.
It takes that URL does take you to urbanfarm.org. It's just, it's super simple. Urbanfarmevents.com is our events page.
Yep. So the general store is open for shipping and local pickup. We do have fertilizer if you still want some. And the fruit trees, we are taking pre-orders for January, and we are taking pre-orders for the mesquite for September, because it's mesquite month. We've got mesquite milling. Should have put that up there. The mesquite milling is happening at the end of the month. If you grow mesquite beans locally and you want to get them milled, you can look to our website at urbanfarmevents.com, and you'll find the link to scheduling for the mesquite classes. I'll be giving one this weekend. Don's giving, Peggy Sue is giving one this weekend with Mike, and then Don is going to be next weekend, and then we'll have the milling the weekend after that.
Perfect.
We don't take a month off.
There you go.
No, we don't.
Yeah, and so the classes this Saturday and next Saturday are we call them walkabouts. You meet at a local park and you actually go harvest beans. Yeah. All right. Anything else, Miss Janice?
Nope.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Miss Janice, for the great work that you always do and creating new stuff. So yeah,
thank you for letting me.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, kids. Talk to you later.
Thank you. And thanks, Eileen.
Thanks,
yep, we like talking about one particular fruit at a time right now, too.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.